Donald Trump knows his Jeffrey Epstein scandal, along with the failed cover-up and the crimes tied to the most notorious pedophile in American history, has effectively ended his presidency. It's over. Things have deteriorated so badly that Trump is now openly melting down on Truth Social and reportedly weighing resignation. We are watching a political collapse in real time, and we're going to break it all down. But before we do, please take a moment to like this video, and if you enjoy the channel and haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way in supporting our work. Now, before we get into Trump's online meltdown, it's important to understand what's driving this panic. Today, a new trove of documents was released, and Trump's response to them has been nothing short of bizarre. He's now attempting to spin the fact that he did, in fact, fly on Epstein's plane. We'll get into that shortly. But first, let's start with Chris Hayes breaking down this latest reporting.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. The Epstein files are still rolling in. At midnight last night, the DOJ decided to upload their third big collection of documents, flouting, we should note, the deadline of last Friday under the law. There wasn't like a, window period where they could upload the files. They had a deadline. But this now brings the total number of files released to over 30,000. And the main impression as folks try to make sense of it all, including in our newsroom, is that it feels like once again we're being kind of sprayed with a fire hose of sewage. I mean, it's full of mistakes and omissions, questionable redactions, even salacious allegations from a tip line. Some documents have been disappearing from the DOJ's webpage after they were published, and Trump's people seem to be happy to make a mess of it all. In fact, that sort of seems like the point. I mean, keep in mind the context here, right? They hate the law that Congress passed, forcing them to release the files. They fought it tooth and nail. They hate the concept of transparency. And Trump has been very clear that he would prefer to protect people. Well, some and not others.
I don't like the pictures of Bill Clinton being shown. I don't like the pictures of other people being shown. I think it's a terrible thing. I think Bill Clinton's a big boy. He can handle it. But you probably have pictures being exposed of other people that innocently met Jeffrey Epstein years ago, many years ago, and they're, highly respected bankers and lawyers and others.
Won't someone think of the bankers and lawyers? As congresspeople from both sides have been saying, protecting a bunch of bankers or lawyers because they're highly respected is violating both the spirit and the letter of the law. Again, you could disagree with the law, but Donald Trump signed that into law. And despite all that, there are some really valuable pieces of information the public is learning from the files once we kind of separate the wheat from the chaff. Today, for instance, we learned that during Trump's first term, this is back in January 2020, an assistant U.S. attorney wrote an internal email about a review of flight records as part of the government's case against Epstein accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell, who has subsequently been transferred to a low-security prison after talking to Trump's attorney, Todd Blanche. And this is what the email says. For your situational awareness, wanted to let you know that the flight records we received yesterday reflect that Donald Trump traveled on Epstein's private jet many more times than previously has been reported or that we were aware, including during the period we would expect to charge in a Maxwell case, the email states. In other words, during a period in which crimes were being committed. The email added that Trump had been on at least 8 Epstein flights. On one flight in 1993, he and Epstein are the only 2 listed passengers. On another, the only 3 passengers are Epstein, Trump, and then 20-year-old redacted. That seems like a justified redaction there. Remember what Trump said last year on social media, quote, "I was never on Epstein's plane or at his stupid island"? That appears to be patently false, right? We also learned over the weekend that Epstein had 10 alleged co-conspirators. This is probably the biggest piece of news to come out of these documents today. So in another email, this one from 2019, the day after Jeffrey Epstein was charged with child sex trafficking by the feds, an FBI employee asked a colleague for, quote, an update on the status of the 10 co-conspirators. Now, this email also shows the incompetent or possibly malign nature of DOJ's redaction efforts, or at least as yet unexplained.
Donald Trump has been caught. And he's not just been caught in these documents. He's been caught in the most obvious and failed cover-up we have ever seen. It is almost as if they want to street and affect themselves. It's like Donald Trump is trying to get us to focus on this very poorly cover-up from the DOJ and the FBI. They want us looking at the fact that he was best buddies with Jeffrey Epstein, that Epstein admitted to it, that Epstein talked about Donald Trump's disgusting and illegal behavior towards young children, and he thinks he can just post his way out of it. Well, it's not working, especially because these two do a lot more damage than they do to help his case. Donald Trump wrote on Truth Social, "This is what the Democrats do to their Republican opponent who is leading them by a lot." This is AI. It is very dangerous for our country. Also, I was never on Epstein's plane or at his stupid island. Strong laws ought to be developed against AI. It will be a big and very dangerous problem in the future. And of course, earlier tonight, Donald Trump said, speaking about the Trump Kennedy Center honors tonight, that he wants to tell us if we think he does a good job as master of ceremony. If it's really good, he says, would you like me to leave the presidency in order to make hosting a full-time job? Donald Trump continues to claim he was never on Jeffrey Epstein's plane, something we now know is simply not true. Not only did Trump fly on Epstein's plane, he did so without Epstein present, traveling instead with Ghislaine Maxwell and another individual described as a potential witness in her case. That fact alone destroys the narrative Trump wants people to believe. This scandal isn't just about Trump knowing Epstein or attending a party years ago. That's only the surface. Trump was closely associated with both Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, and he traveled with Maxwell herself. And Maxwell was not a passive assistant. She was a central figure in the abuse. That means Trump wasn't on the periphery of this operation. He was connected to the two people at the center of it. Yet Trump wants to frame this as a minor association and move on. Instead of taking responsibility, he's trying to distract, complaining about AI, media narratives, and anything else he thinks might change the subject. The irony is staggering, given that his own policies helped enable unchecked power for tech elites, while real harm continues to go unaddressed. The larger point is this. Trump isn't just protecting himself, he's protecting an entire network. He has a long history of aligning himself with criminals, whether financial, political, or otherwise, and this is no different. He wants the focus off the abuse, off the accountability, and off the people who could still speak out. That's what this cover-up is about, and it's why it matters. Ari Melber broke down Trump's failed attempt to contain this scandal and the consequences of it right here.
The DOJ's handling of this release is peculiar. Those files posted yesterday were available for hours, then they were removed at 8 p.m., then they were reposted around midnight, which gives you an idea of what it's like to work at Trump's DOJ in this Christmas week. The files also reveal an email from an investigator who said they had a photo of Trump with Maxwell while searching Bannon's phone. Again, that's interesting to say the least. The investigator included the photo, but that was redacted. There was an uproar over the photos removed from the DOJ's website, which were also then restored. If you see from the headlines and the point here, this has been a bungled operation and at times an illegal cover-up. That's just the facts tonight. Now, one of the photos was inside Epstein's home and it had that Trump image as part of a personal collection. You see it there. Of all the things that have come out in this Epstein story, what you see the arrow pointing at is not exactly the worst thing for Donald Trump in terms of public embarrassment, and yet they took it down and then put it back up. Survivors have been speaking out.
I am no longer supporting this administration. I am so disgusted with this administration. I think that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel both need to resign, and I would love to see number 47 get impeached over this.
We went from, very happy, very excited, where we've reached somewhere to now being very disappointed. It's come to the point where we can't even trust our government.
Those are the voices of survivors. They can't trust their government even after they led a actual movement, I don't know what else you would call it, of survivors and their allies and others interested in truth in the story, as well as a bipartisan coalition in Congress. And that movement went from, hey, you're never going to see anything and get a vote, to forcing a vote, to forcing the president to sign that law because they already had a veto-proof majority. The voices of the survivors you hear have achieved a lot this year as we end in this odd Christmas week, this Epstein document dump week. They've achieved a lot. But you can see their work's not done. They're still pressing because what we're witnessing in real time, as we've been reporting since Friday night, is an illegal cover-up in plain sight.
These people are disgusting, but they can and will be defeated. Why? Because of you. You stayed engaged, demanded the release of the Epstein files, and applied pressure that Donald Trump cannot ignore. Every single person watching this video has been part of something meaningful. This fight matters. Refusing to let the mainstream media control the narrative is why we've made progress, and if you stuck around at the end, you can drop the blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I will see you soon.